Opportunity to bring you Legends of Our Time on GBC News and Ghana Television. On Legends of Our Time, we celebrate our heroes. And of course, my name is Gifty AG. So throughout history, there always emerge in every nation a number of people who usually a small group who symbolize the face of that nation. Ghana has its own set of such prominent people who over the period have made us proud as they reflect the good values we share as a nation. Our guest for today readily counts as one of the few who make us proud as a nation whenever his name is mentioned. He is a venerable traditional leader, an academic and a peacemaker above all. I welcome to Legends of Our Time the affable Nana S.K.B. Dr. Asante. Hello, Nana.
Hello.
Thank you so much for the honor.
No, the pleasure is mine.
I really love your outfit and your particular kente. Is there a name to it?
I think this probably will be a Gunasa, yeah.
You know, researching on you, I got to know that your S.K.B. Asante is actually Samuel Kujo Boateng. And you also happen to be the Oman Hene of Asorkore traditional area.
That's correct.
Yes, Nana. I want to know if the Asante is your stool name.
Yes, it's also my stool name. I'm Nana Susubribi Krobia Asante.
Okay.
Yes.
So briefly, tell us about the Asorkore stool and your assents to it.
The Asorkore stool is one of the well-established traditional states of Asante. It belongs to the Akona clan. There are two major occupants of stools in the Akona clan. One is the Adanse Hene and the other is me. We were originally very near Kumasi and then we migrated to our present place. But our brothers, our kinsmen, stayed at Asokore Mampong. So there is an Asokore Mampong. And then there is Asante Asokore. We are all brothers.
Okay.
And then some of our kinsmen also migrated to eastern region. So you have Asokore, Yakuforidua, you see. And therefore, we are all related. And some of our kinsmen were also sent by the Asante Hene on a military expedition during those days of inter-ethnic strife. And they, it was the advance guard which stayed in Brekum. So Brekum was founded by the Asokore stool.
Okay.
Yes, that's right.
That's good to know. And we know the chieftaincy institution or royalty in Ghana is very key when it comes to, bringing all of us together as a people. And so ordinarily the thinking is that such an old institution, you should be able to kind of regulate or your area so that issues like succession and all that today shouldn't be a problem. But today, it is not so. Why is it the case?
Well, you see, according to the Akan custom, the only people who are eligible for chieftaincy are those who belong to certain families. I don't want to use the word royal because the royal imports, leveraged servants and all the rest. But there are houses which are eligible. And these houses have an historical basis for their claim. And therefore, when a stool is vacant, the eligible houses contend for it. So you can't avoid a contest for chieftaincy, certainly in Ashanti. 2 or 3 people from eligible houses will compete, and then there will have to be a selection. We don't have a system like primogeniture in England where the descent goes from one to the other. But we are aware of the disputes arising from contests, and so The Constitution provides that the National House of Chiefs will establish the lines of succession to various tools. It's a laudable idea, except that it needs major funding, because this is a major project. How to establish that in a certain community, certain houses are eligible, and that also has some disputes from time to time. So we are aware of the problem, and we are trying to address the problem. But the National House of Chiefs is a constitutional body, and this assignment is a constitutional assignment, and it has to be supported by state funds. And one just can't sit down and say, well, this is offensive, only these people are eligible. You have to do some research. It's a major research project which has to be properly funded. So
but I think it has taken us too long.
Yes, well, if we get the funding, we can initiate the appropriate. Even without the funding, there has been some effort to do that, at least in the northern region, The former Minister for Chieftaincy Affairs, Dr.
Dana,
that's right. He was an official of the National House of Chiefs, and that was one of his projects. And he worked together with the former president and our professor, Nabila. That's right.
Okay. Let's say that's good to know. So quickly, let's look at your early days. I know you were born during the colonial period, and those days there were no electricity, no hospitals, computers. So I wonder how you people coped. How was life like?
You mean growing up?
Yeah.
Going to school?
We'll get your educational background, but Ghana generally, around the period you were born, how was it like?
Yes, you are absolutely right that there were no facilities or amenities like that, particularly in the rural area. Certainly there were no computers, whether it was in the urban area or not. But we had libraries, we had very devoted and dedicated teachers. And at that time, studying was a yearning for young people, because there were very few schools in those days. For example, in my area, for an area comprising about 30 towns and villages, there was only one senior school. And I always cite the case of the late Professor Edubuahin, who used to live in Jabin and used to walk 7 miles in and out to attend the school. But they came to, they came from all parts of the region and all parts of the country to attend school. And once you got into it, nobody would tell you to work hard. So the access was limited, but the motivation to work hard was there, and the teachers were highly dedicated.
Okay, so you started the conversation with your educational background, though, but let's look at the family in which you came from. Of course, you were born in Asorkore.
Yes.
But did you grow up there?
Yes.
Okay.
I grew up in Asokore.
How many siblings? Your parents? We want to know. Your family.
All right. My mother was called Yavisi, and her Christian name was Mary Befi. But I want to remember my grandmother, Obapenyin Amasewa, because I lived with her while my mother went on her trading expeditions to various towns like Obuasi, Accra, Tapa, and so forth. My father was a cocoa purchasing officer called Daniel Asante, and met my mother. By the time I was growing, they were separated. So I lived mostly with my
grandmother,
my mother and grandmother, and my extended family members.
That's
right.
Do you have siblings?
Yes.
How many of them?
3 girls. Unfortunately, all 3 of them have passed away. I'm the eldest, and I'm left alone.
That's good to know. So at what age did you begin elementary school?
About 5.
About 5 years.
Yeah,
and that was the period around the World War?
Yes,
period?
yes, this was 1938, just before the World War.
Before the World
As
War.
I say, I went to school during the Second World War.
And how was school like at the time?
School was fun, as far as I'm concerned. It was the main center around which the town revolved, the fulcrum. And I always recall my my headmaster, called S.K.B, who is sitting here. And this is me sitting, as I said, from the left, right here. Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
So this is you.
Yes, that's me.
Okay, let the camera pick it. So there is Nana.
And the headmaster that I'm referring to is here, S.K.B. I refer to him because
so that's the headmaster, the one here.
The one in the tie, right there.
So that's the headmaster.
Yeah, S.K.B. came from Agri, but he kept urging me to take the entrance examination to Achimota School. In those days, there was no common entrance exam. And so you had to decide if you were brave enough to say that I want.
And were you brave enough?
I was not brave enough, and I had to be urged. You know, not that I was not brave enough. It didn't even occur to me, because in our area there was no secondary school all the way from Asante to the northern region. We call it the northern sector. Not one secondary school. All about 12 of them along the coast, Cape Coast, Accra, mainly. So somebody had to really have to sort of
the motivation to
give you some intimation that this is the place you want to do. And when you said, you know, take the entrance examination to Achimota School, I said yes. I didn't do it because I was dissuaded by some senior students that I would never get into Achimota. But eventually, he prevailed on me, and I took the entrance examination, got a scholarship, and so forth and so on. I must also mention the Omankina of Asante Asorkore, because he donated £3,000 in those days to the establishment of the Asorkore Methodist School. And the Asorkore Methodist School has many distinguished teachers like Timothy Ansa and J.K. Boafo and so forth and so on. So that's how we survived the rural area and all is constrained without electricity. We had some sort of a library, but not much by way of facility. But we worked hard with what we had, and we were motivated by the inspiration of our teachers.
So those days, how was it traveling from Asorkore to Achimota? Were there vehicles?
It was usually by rail. We went to Kumasi or we went to Ejiso, and then got on to a special train which stopped at the Achimota Junction. We called it the Achimota Junction. Then we walked from the junction to the school.
And how long did it take you to travel from Asorkore to Achimota?
A whole day. From the train started in Kumasi at 8 a.m. and landed in Accra at 5 p.m. You know, in those days. It's a whole day journey. And you had to travel from Asorkore to Kumasi, which took about 30 to 40 minutes, only 24 miles in those days.
So you finally got to Achimota School.
Yes, that's correct.
And I'm sure a village boy traveled all the way from Asorkore to Achimota, where, I mean, you met some affluent kids from rich backgrounds. How was the Achimota School experience like?
It was a fascinating experience, because although we met students from some affluent families, the majority of us were, you know, from rural people. Achimota was interested in bringing people from all backgrounds to the school, from all backgrounds and from all parts of the then Gold Coast. So we mixed well. We were all subjected to the same rules, you know. Prefects were chosen without reference to their background and so forth. And I have some pictures which I've already given to you. But there was one funny incident that I want to recount, yes, since we are
Please
talking
do.
of people of various backgrounds.
Yeah.
I was in Form 2 or Form 3 in 1948. So I was in a position to bully people who had come from. I entered in 1946.
Okay.
And I recall that Bonito Olympio, you know, the son of the late president of Togo, who was at that time the head of a U.S., you know, very affluent. And he brought his son, Bonito, to Achimota, and I was just, you know, a year or so ahead of him. And as soon as he landed from the car, I said, you know what, kneel down.
And he complied.
He was shaking. And his father was laughing.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we mix well. I mean, I mix with people from all parts of the country. I can remember names like Kuji, Afenyade, Agbadeka, Anthony Andan, Oklete, people from other parts of the country. And we all got on well. And I must always mention our teachers. Our teachers were very good. They were mostly non-African, you know, English mostly, and a few from America and the Caribbean, one from Ceylon, Sri Lanka. But there were also some very good Ghanaian teachers who were graduates, and they'd been to school or other schools and gone to universities abroad and come back. I can remember M.A. Ribeiro, history, B.A. Brown, mathematics, George Odoy, science, A.B. Atefa, history, Maria Poku, art, Ephraim Amu, great musician.
Yeah.
They really helped us. It made us realize that we too could go abroad and come.
This issue of having students from various backgrounds, I think it even runs in your anthem, the school anthem.
Yes,
yes,
from Gaba to Accra, yes. We are all brothers and sisters, and the mother is a school. So it was a unifying environment, and there was no distinction between one and the other. Yeah. Okay.
Okay. So today, Achimota School is in the news. Your school is in the news, and it has to do with that Rastafarian boy.
Yes, go ahead.
What's your view on that issue, Nana? You think that boy should be given the opportunity, or the school should go strictly by the school?
You're putting me on the spot, aren't you? Well, a court has decided, so we have to abide by the court. But actually, now that you ask, in the year 2015, some Muslim leaders made representations to the National Peace Council that Muslim students were being discriminated against, and that they wanted our intervention. So we had a national stakeholders conference, and I wrote an article, you know. I mean, I made a presentation. That presentation formed the basis of a lecture which I delivered to the Methodist Church on religious freedom and tolerance and so forth. So I have some views on this. We live in a plural society of various religious and ethnic backgrounds, and yet we all are subject to some discipline when we go to school. It is understandable that Achimota School would want uniformity, because in our days, you know, people were allowed to make their hair. Ladies spent hours doing their hair, and of course, your hair make, spoke about your status and so forth. This thing was abolished by having a uniform haircut. But there's a very, very delicate issue whether the students were sent away on religious grounds, on the grounds that, their hairstyle represented their religious faith, and therefore they were discriminated against, or whether they were actually sent away for some routine, mundane reason like uniformity. That is a matter which has to be clarified. A decision has been made on the two students, and I respect the decision of the High Court. But it may go to, in fact, it's going to be appealed against, and eventually...
Achimota intends to appeal, I guess.
Eventually, the Supreme Court will have to decide. And somebody was suggesting that maybe the matter should have gone to the Supreme Court in the first place for an authoritative interpretation of the Constitution as it affects this matter. Because there have been other countries, like Jamaica, where the decision went the other way. So we await the outcome of the final decision. But I can see both sides of the question. And let's wait until we get a definitive decision.
But it looks like what is happening is not too healthy for our nation. So you being a senior citizen, what advice will you give us to bring about that tolerance in the country?
Yes, that's what I'm saying, that I don't think Achimota School was discriminating against religion, or at least that's not my understanding. They were insisting on discipline. The question is whether that also affected their religious way of life. Achimota has always been an open school. When we were at school at Achimota, those who didn't want to go to church were given a room, a reading room, and go. There was no compulsion about religion, and so forth.
Okay, so Nana, we'll take a quick break. When we come back, we'll talk more, because I have a lot for you to come in. So we'll take our first break. When we come back, we'll talk more. Please don't go away. Welcome back. Just joined us. You're watching Legends of Our Time on GBC News and Ghana Television. And today, my guest is Nana Dr. S.K.B. Asante, the Omanhene of the Asorkore traditional area. Nana, okay, so we've spoken extensively about Achimota School.
Yes.
Let's look at your transition, next step to becoming a lawyer, having a first degree, and from Achimota School, you traveled to London, Nottingham University.
Yes.
And that was in 1956.
I went in 1953 and graduated in 1956.
1956. Yes. And how was the experience like, a black man from Africa, Ghana, going to London for the first time to learn? How was it? Share the experience with us.
First of all, I want to point out that I went on a scholarship. Because some time ago there were no scholarships available for law. This changed just before independence. And the panel that interviewed us was chaired by the late eminent Edward Akufo-Addo, father of our president. That's right, yes. So we won a scholarship. I won a scholarship with some colleagues, and two of us, somebody called J.K. Ajiman and myself, a distinguished lawyer, were admitted to Nottingham in the year 1953. But when we went, two Nottingham students had already been there. One was Philip Archer, who became Chief Justice later on, and the other was Darocha, who was a very eminent lawyer, head of the law school, politician, chairman of the NPP, and Secretary General of the PP, which preceded the NTC. So we had the benefit of their experience. Darocha was very much my mentor in many ways. We were followed by other Ghanaians, including I.K. Aban, who also became Chief Justice, Peter Alajete, who became Speaker, people like Dominic Mills, who became Registrar General. As mentioned again, J.K. Ajima, my classmate, who became a very prominent lawyer, and people like Cromwell Quist and Major Brown, they all followed us, yeah. It was a very small law school, no more than 100 people, with excellent faculty people, brilliant, who had time for us. We all were housed in somebody's mansion. You know?
Hey, you stayed in a mansion at the time.
Yeah, that's somebody's mansion, formal mansion, and classrooms and offices and libraries are all located. So you could bump into any lecturer at any time. And those who are lawyers will know people like Harry Street and J.C. Smith and J.C. Thomas, who became internationally famous. So these were our teachers. I was very active in extracurricular affairs. I was a secretary of the University Liberation Society, so we participated in the social life of the activity. I was also a member of the hall committee of my hall, Hugh Stewart Hall. With the benefit of Darocha's experience, we were okay. I think we did well in the university, and that's when we got our degree. That's my, I'd like to show that, my graduation picture. So you contrast that with...
handsome man.
Thank you.
Wow. That was from Nottingham.
Yeah.
Okay. Yes. But why the decision to study law in the first place?
That really was by chance, I was going to study history. I was all set to go and read history, honors history, at the University College of the Gold Coast in those days.
Okay. That's
now
University
the
of Ghana.
Yeah. And
wow.
I had been admitted, and then these law scholarships were advertised. As I told you, we didn't have any idea of law scholarships being available, so we just went and tried our luck. And so at a certain stage, I wasn't sure whether I wanted to do history or law. I would have done history with my elementary school classmate, who was the late Professor Dubuahin. Yeah. So that's how I came to do law. I was given a scholarship to study law and then come and join the government department because the government was looking for lawyers for various departments and agencies. That's right.
But during your stay in UK, was there any episode of, racism? You experienced any form of racism at any point in time whilst in UK?
Any
form of racism, being a black person?
Yes. Well, at the university setting, there was no racism. And we had the head of department who was very, very, very liberal. And he told me that he had taught a Ghanaian student called Koranchi Taylor at the University of Manchester, and that in his view, Koranchi Taylor was the best student that he had ever taught, ever.
Okay. So
he knew about the capability of the student. Now in the student body, everybody was polite. When there were dances, called the university hops, and you ask an English girl to dance, of course you will not say no. Sometimes the distance will be quite obvious. You talk about the weather or some other thing. But if you went to town, to Nottingham Palais, and you wanted to dance with an English guy, who was on the university, he could tell you straight in your face, I don't want to dance with you. So I didn't have the courage to go down. I had a Nigerian friend who said, "Sam, let us go."
Try our feet.
Let us go. And I said, no, I don't want to go and be rejected. Oh, well, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 8, 9 guys will say yes, but one will say yes. He was thick-skinned enough. But there was one incident of racism when I was at Nottingham University. I wanted to see a dentist. And the dentist asked for my name, and he said, "Oh, Asante." He said, "Are you Italian?" I said, "No, I come from Africa." He said, "I don't see Africans or colored people." And I reported this to my fellow students and staff, and they were outraged. And within about 30 minutes, I had about 10 offers from dentists who were prepared to see me, so that really canceled that. So in the university setting, I didn't see that. It wasn't evident, certainly. Some of them sometimes were surprised that you were doing well. However, I will tell you a story. In the first examination at Nottingham Law Department, after our admission, my friend and I, J.K. Ajman, we came top in that examination.
Wow.
And that was sensation. They said, you know, 2 diminutive Africans have come from the tropics and have come out tops in all subjects, English law. Where did they learn English from? It was all fun, yeah.
It was all fun. Yeah. So from Nottingham, you went to University of London,
yes,
and then to Yale for your doctorate.
That's correct.
In 1965. How were you able to achieve all this within that space?
Well, actually, after my master's degree in London, I stayed to complete my legal training. We had to be articled to a firm of solicitors for 3 years, and I used 2 of those years to do the master's degree. And after that, I had to do my legal qualifications. And after that, I came back to Ghana and worked in the Attorney General's Department for a year, and later on got a transfer to the University of Ghana, where I was one of the pioneer lecturers in law. It was from there. And in fact, I was also acting head of the law department at one time. University of Ghana. I can tell you about my famous students like the President Mills and so forth.
Okay, you taught President Mills.
I was actually a lecturer when he was admitted, and he always acknowledged me as a lecturer. I have a picture here which shows that he pointed out that he wanted to take a picture with 2 of his former lecturers, myself and J.K. Ajman. You know, it goes. It was after my Legon period, or during my Legon period, that I went to Yale. So there was a break.
There was a break.
In 1963, and that came about because there was a law conference on Africa, and universities from all over the world came, and Yale Law School sent its representative. Somebody said, you know, you've got English law degrees, how about coming to the U.S. to try? And he literally presented me with the application form for Yale Law School and an application form for a fellowship to go with it. And I filled them, and they said, come.
And you went, just
and
like
I went,
that.
just like that. So it was a very lucky break for me. So that's how I got my doctorate in law at Yale Law School, which is an excellent school.
Excellent school.
Yes.
And today, I mean, you are known as a world-renowned arbitrator. You've sat on the International Court of Arbitration of the International Chamber of Commerce, and you have even co-founded the Ghana Arbitration Center.
Yes.
At what point did you decide to specialize in this area of law?
When I finished my doctorate at Yale Law School, I was appointed a lecturer in law at the University of Leeds in England. But before I went, I had an offer from the World Bank's legal department. And so after 1 year, at Leeds, I joined the legal department of the World Bank, which introduced me to the area of international business transactions. So that was the beginning of my interest in international business transactions, which also included international arbitrations, as far as lawyers were concerned. And from there, the World Bank, as an attorney, I was appointed Solicitor General of Ghana in 1969, and later on they made me Deputy Attorney General. During that period, I was very much involved in international negotiations, international arbitration, and so forth. And then eventually, in 1977, I went back to international service as Chief Legal Advisor of the UN Center on Transnational Corporations, which was also involved in international, not only involved, in fact, it advised developing countries on how to negotiate these transactions. And a major part of that undertaking was international arbitration. That's how we got involved in international arbitration. I was appointed an international arbitrator before my retirement from the UN, and I continued. What happens in international arbitration is that a country or the organization itself, there are many international arbitration institutions like the ICC and the International Center for the Settlement of Investment Disputes and the London Court of International Arbitration. You're either appointed by a party to the dispute. It may be a country or a company, or sometimes the institution itself looks for a panel of arbitrators. And that's how I got involved. In other categories, I have featured as an arbitrator. And that's how, when I came, Darocha, for example, said, why don't you help us to establish an arbitration center?
Okay.
And I had the support and of people like the Honorable Samuel Okujetu, senior lawyer, and Kwame Tete. All these helped in co-founding the Ghana Arbitration Center, which is exposing Ghanaians to both national and international arbitration.
Okay. So, per your work on the international scene, which case would you say was the most significant case that you ever had to sit on or dealt with?
I think my work, first of all, my work at the World Bank was very important for me because it introduced me to international business transactions. I recall being sent with others to establish the Korea Development Finance Corporation as early as 1968. And the Korea Development Finance Corporation was the vehicle that brought capital from the West towards the industrialization of Korea. So that was very important. But my really critical work in international service was being first as Chief Legal Advisor and later on as a director of an organization known as the United Nations Center on Transnational Corporations. This was an organization that provided assistance to developing countries when they were negotiating international business transactions like petroleum agreements, mining agreements, international construction contracts, international management contracts, international financing arrangements. I should mention that there were certain milestones in my experience in this field. It started in Ghana. In Ghana, I was the chairman of the technical committee that acquired 55% equity interest in Asante Goldfield and other foreign-owned mines and timber companies. I was also the chairman of the team that acquired what is now called GOIL, used to Ajak.
Okay.
I participated in the acquisition of Gaib, which is now TOR.
Okay.
I also participated in the negotiation of the financing for the Pong project. Yes, we went to about 7 international banks, the World Bank, Saudi Fund, and so forth and so on. So by the time that I went there, I had that experience. And when I went to the United Nations, the experience became global because we were receiving requests from various countries around the world. First of all, before I mention those foreign countries, I want to mention two things that we did for Ghana.
Okay, please do.
One is that we assisted Ghana in the renegotiation of the Balco Agreement, which I've talked about, I think, in one of your programs. But another thing which we did is that we provided critical assistance to Ghana when it was establishing its petroleum regime. We were involved in the establishment of, in the enactment of the Ghana petroleum law, and also in the establishment of model contracts which prepared the ground for the momentum of investment into our petroleum sector. This is a matter which a former head of GNPC has actually testified to in my book, in the book In Honor of Me, talking about UNTC's work in Ghana in the petroleum sector. So that's a very important thing. But internationally, I want to mention what happened in China. China, that's the People's Republic of China, was and is still a communist country. But it decided to go liberal in its economic policy, notwithstanding its communist orientation. So in doing that, they invited a number of organizations to help them to elaborate this policy, particularly in the matter of negotiating agreements with transnational or multinational corporations. So they invited the UN Center on Transnational Corporations to come, and I was a member of the team. Sometimes I even led the team. I remember in one case, a certain gentleman called Huan, who was very well known in Nkrumah's days as the Chinese ambassador to Ghana, who was then foreign minister, informed our ambassador to China that a UN delegation led by a Ghanaian is coming to assist us in this area. I mentioned China because China didn't know anything about international negotiations. But the intensity of their attention and their devotion to developing expertise in this area were phenomenal. And as you know now, they are major experts. That's right. And this is something that I mentioned because I think I would like us to also develop expertise in these international negotiations. Okay.
So Nana, with this your area, arbitration, imagine I have an issue with somebody, why should I opt for arbitration instead of going to the court?
ADR was introduced into Ghana by the judiciary, you know, the former Chief Justice George Woods, former Supreme Court Justice Brobe, and many others saw that ordinary litigation was cumbersome. There was a backlog of cases. People didn't get through. There were adjournments and so forth. And that the more expeditious way of resolving disputes would be resort to ADR, alternative dispute resolution, which includes mediation and arbitration. So the reason why you prefer arbitration is that it's expeditious.
Okay.
It is also in areas of commercial law or commercial transactions, it allows the parties to choose arbitrators who are experts in this field. You see, when a case goes to high court, nobody knows who will be a judge. You may not be an expert in that field, but here you have the parties themselves choosing experts in the field. It used to be said that arbitration is cheaper. This may not necessarily be so, depending on the pattern of arbitrators and the fees that are charged and so forth and so on. But it's expeditious, and it is efficient, and so it has become an important mechanism for resolving dispute. But the international arena is very, very important, because when a company from, say, India or America enters into an agreement with a company from Ghana and there's a dispute, nobody would like to submit to a domestic court. So they resort to international arbitration as a neutral way of resolving the matter. So that's how people, there has become a necessity, yes.
You've really done a lot on the international scene. Of course, you've worked with the World Bank, you've lectured at Howard University, Washington, D.C., Temple Law School, Cambridge, United Nations, and a lot more. And so I'm curious, how were you able to land all these job opportunities on the international, arena?
Well, there's I have to acknowledge the help of others. In this book, I wrote an epilogue thanking all the people who have been helpful to me in my educational and professional career. And the story goes from one to other, how I landed in, for example, in the World Bank. When I decided that I wanted to stay abroad for a little while, in 1965, my professor helped me to contact a number of universities. He was responsible for my going to Leeds University. But he also had a friend called Lloyd Cutler in Washington, who was involved in the negotiation of the original VACO agreement, and had pointed out that if I didn't get something outside, I wouldn't mind working outside the law department for some time. I wouldn't mind working in VACO. So he sent me there. And they said, oh, VACO doesn't have facilities at this time. But one of the colleagues said, but have you ever thought of the World Bank? I said, what is the World Bank? So they do this and we do this and do that. Sent my CV. So when I was about to go to Leeds, they sent me, invited me for an interview, and said, if I make an offer to you, would you come immediately? And I said, well, I'm committed to Leeds, but if I can wait for 1 year. And they did. So that's how I got there. That's the World Bank. And then I was appointed Solicitor General in Ghana. That's a number of reasons, including my friend Arocha, who was then very, very active in government circles. And now the international, going back to the United Nations was another thing. So I attended a conference. I have a picture of that conference at Addis Ababa. And I was elected chairman of the conference. It was a conference of African countries on their position on multinational corporations. And the head of the UN Center on Transnational Cooperation was organizing this conference. When I was elected chairman, he listened to me and so forth. After the
conference.
After the conference, I intimated him that I was available for consultancy. I was then going to leave the Attorney General's office to establish my own legal practice. Then I get a telegram from him saying, instead of me my concern, come and be my legal advisor. Ah. So that's how I went there. Okay. And as for international arbitration, I was, just towards the end of my retirement, I was appointed an arbitrator in a very, very important case in Sri Lanka, between Sri Lanka and a British company. And Sri Lanka appointed me as the arbitrator, and that's how I got involved in the international arbitration. Again, that was possibly on the recommendation of a colleague of mine in the World Bank legal department called Christopher Pinto, who recommended me. So one thing leads to another, and I'm indebted to many people for their intervention.
Stood on the shoulders of giants.
That's right, yeah.
In the course of your career.
Yeah, yes.
Okay, so today, if I want to join the UN or any of these international organizations, from you, what should be the do's and don'ts, your recommendations?
Well, from time to time, they advertise positions. UN requires that you have at least a master's degree. You can't go to UN without a master's degree. Some positions are made available to certain groups of countries, at the top, there's balance. But the staffing, it depends on, your luck. Because sometimes the thing may be advertised, but they may have somebody internal for you. So, but from recommendation from people that you know and here and there, you may land in one and you start climbing.
And do you need a second language?
I think you don't need it, but it is preferable.
It's preferable.
Yes, it's preferable to have it.
Thank you so much, Nana.
Okay.
Indeed, you are a legend. We're so proud of you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for the honor.
Thank you.
Thank you. So the program has been Legends of Our Time on GBC News and Ghana Television. My guest for today has been the Omanhene of the Asorkore traditional area and also a renowned international arbitrator. My name is Gifty AJ. Thank you for watching.